Welcome to another episode of Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. Sorry, Fresh Brewed Politics. My name is Andrew Cooperrider. I will be your host. I will also be dealing with a couple stories today. One of them is, sorry, one second, getting a little feedback in my mic. Sorry, dealing with a couple stories today. One will be about Gretchen Whitmer, caught with her, not her hand in the cookie jar per se, but as a hypocrite like we've seen a lot of people as. And also we're going to go over and take a deep dive into the Facebook user agreement. They released a new one that has some alarming repercussions. But in the meantime, guys, please hit the share button. Share this out everywhere you can. I invite you guys to share it on other platforms. We are, of course, on pretty much every single social media platform. Our main one we're trying to push people to is Telegram. Our Telegram channel is called Brewed Liberty, and we want to try to grow that channel as much as we can because quite clearly, Facebook doesn't like us. And as you're going to listen today as we go through the policy, you're going to see where they dinged us at, how some of the things they dinged us on, and it's pretty crazy when you start looking at it. So please hit the share button, though. That's the first way you can help us. Hit the share button. If you're watching on YouTube, share the link out to the show to other people. Hit the share button down in the corner. Tell people about us. If you're listening to this in the podcast form, tell people about us. It's an honor. And please as well, join us on our Telegram channel. We do post different content there that is Brewed Liberty. And of course, the number one way you can support us is to take that gross, nasty Folgers you're putting in your cup every morning and replace it with brewed coffee. Listen, guys, we sell 1 pound bags online. You can support us from all around the country. You can go to brewedco.com, brewedco.com. You can replace that nasty Folgers with a nice piping hot cup of 1776. Listen, guys, it is less per ounce than even some other well-known Liberty, well, maybe not Liberty, but well-known brands such as Black Rifle Coffee or others. It's cheaper per ounce. And so I invite you guys to try us out, put us in your cup. That's the number one way you guys can support us financially as we move forward and move into these things. And of course, hit the share button, follow us on Telegram because this video here may actually get us banned. Just kind of depends on how Facebook wants to look at it, depends on how they feel about it. But that won't stop us from reporting on it because you know what? We feel it's important to say even if it costs us our entire Facebook page. So please share us out, follow us on Telegram, tell your friends about us, and let's dig into it. We're first going to start off with the Whitmer getting caught out at a bar. So what happened? Well, Whitmer was out at a bar, and she was caught. A picture was taken of her out there. And in the picture, she was sitting at a table, unmasked, with about 15 other people. And where this becomes a problem is right here in the current Michigan guidelines, which says the consumption of food or beverages is permitted only in a designated dining area where patrons are seated and groups of patrons are separated by at least 6 feet. No more than 6 patrons are seated together at a table, booth, or group of fixed seats. And groups of patrons do not intermingle. So this photo's released of 15 people. Well, first it gets released by somebody, and then they realize, whoopsies, I accidentally just posted the governor and one of her top aides out at a dive bar breaking her own COVID restrictions. So they try to delete it. Well, there's no such thing as anything on Facebook being forgotten. So obviously it was grabbed. I know a couple news sites like Breitbart and them have some pictures. Mainstream starting to cover it now, where it's a picture of her quite clearly seen with 15 people. And so, kind of, what ended up happening was she came out and she apologized. But in her apology, this is what she said. Okay, she said she went to a restaurant with some friends, and when more people arrived, tables are pushed together to merge parties. She said everyone was vaccinated, so they didn't stop to think about it being an issue. In retrospect, this is her, I should have thought about it. I'm a human. I made a mistake. I apologize. So she admits to doing it. She admits to being a mistake, but she apologizes. Yet we have people like myself who are out here getting our liquor licenses taken away for supposedly breaking the same rules. Now, of course, I'm in Kentucky, but, you know, I imagine, I know for a fact, because, of course, I talk to other restaurant owners, other bar owners, other people fighting for liberty. I know about 3 or 4 places I'm aware of in Michigan that are facing ABC licenses taken away, taking their business license away, that are fighting to keep their businesses after what is one of the worst lockdown states in the country, Michigan. And then to see Governor Whitmer going out to a bar, ignoring her own orders, and then being like, whoopsies, it's an accident. Meanwhile, there are people right now with court cases pending where she's doing the same thing that they're getting in trouble for. She gets to say, I'm just a human, I made a mistake. But do they have that ability? No. You're taking everything from them. Oops, I'm a human. Is she saying, oops, I'm a human? If you guys remember from one of our prior podcasts, we covered how she's under investigation by both the FFA and the IRS for ignoring her own COVID orders again and taking a private plane down to Florida to visit her father. And the private plane wasn't even legal to be flown, is what's being investigated. Reportedly wasn't legal to be flown. So the FFA is investigating it and the IRS is investigating it because her nonprofit paid for the flight despite the fact it was a personal trip. And despite the fact that she had her own orders saying she couldn't be traveling. And to top that off, she just like didn't think about it. Just threw a bunch of people together at tables. It must be great. And you know, it's some gall. It's some real risky gall. Okay, if I'm one of these people, like Beshear, like Whitmer, like Newsom, like any of these people, I wouldn't be going out and doing these things. Of course, Newsom's getting caught out at French Laundry. We all remember that story. I wouldn't be doing that because if I'm a restaurant owner and I get a call up from one of these people, one of the governors, being like, hey, yeah, we want to come out and gather in a group of 15 people. I say, yeah, you can come on out. I'd roll out the red carpet. Be like, come on out. We'd love to have you rolling out the red carpet. And then I'd be making a phone call to my IT guy, asking him to install new high definition cameras because I'm recording every moment of it because you've destroyed my lives, you've destroyed other people's lives, and I'm going to make you pay. And the gall of these people to go out and think there will be no repercussions for their actions, that believe they won't get caught, is ridiculous. And of course, you know what? They're probably right. There probably will be no repercussions for their actions. There are still people in Michigan, I bet, that support her. There are still people around this country that think her decisions were right. Beshear's decisions were right. Newsom's decisions were right. Cuomo's decisions were right. Despite the damage they've done, despite the fact that there's a lot of argument over whether or not they even actually accomplished anything. A lot of argument. You see there's a picture of all of them out at the bar. You'll see her, and you'll see her top 8 over here, and you're seeing right there a nice, let's see here, let's count it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You more than doubled the amount you're supposed to have, pulling tables together. Nobody's wearing a mask. Your mask order's still in place. So, of course, what does she do to try to hide away from it? What does she do to try to get away from it? Well, of course, she decides she's going to go ahead and change up the orders. She announces fully vaccinated residents do not have to wear masks. She also announces that she's going to end more of her mandates. She's going to allow businesses to go back to working in person, and she's going to lift capacity restrictions out at bars. Why? Because she got caught not believing. See, it isn't just being a hypocrite of saying, well, you've gone and ignored your own orders. How do you stand there with an honest look on your face and say, these are saving lives, COVID is dangerous, and then go out and do things like this and then stand there and think you're saving people's lives? You clearly do not believe it. You clearly do not believe it. When you're doing these kinds of things, you clearly yourself know it's a political ploy. Either that or you're rationalizing it. I remember there was a mayor of Denver who had the nerve to tweet 40 minutes before getting on a plane and flying to his daughter's house in Mississippi to have Thanksgiving, stay home and avoid travel. 40 minutes later, he got on a plane. 40 minutes later. So they rationalize it. They say, hey, well, I can do it. I know it. I'm being safe. I'm being whatever. And that's fine. You want to say that? At least have rules that come out that match your own actions. At least have them come out that match your own actions. Just like she said, well, I didn't think about it because we're all vaccinated. Well, if that's the science, if that's what you're following, Governor Whitmer, if that's what it is, then why isn't it that isn't the guidelines? Why isn't it the guidelines? Well, of course that isn't the guidelines because, well, for us, it's different. We're special. I mean, I remember Lori Lightfoot getting caught getting her hair cut when no one else could get their hair cut. And her excuse was literally, I'm in the public eye. I take my hygiene seriously, and I'm unable and cannot cut my own hair. They believe they're special than you. They think they're better than you. And yet there's still people out there who will re-elect these individuals. There's people out there who support them. People I know. I saw somebody on my friends list make a post attacking Lori Lightfoot for only allowing, supposedly she's only allowing minorities, in her words, black and brown people to interview her about a certain topic because she's trying to help an underrepresented group. That's her statement. And somebody makes a post about it on my page and says, well, that seems a little racist. Which, by definition, the minute you're separating out what people can or can't do by skin color, it's racist. But somebody I know goes on and defends them. It says, well, they're underrepresented and everything else. These are pieces of garbage. That's the only thing you can call them. The minute you have individuals, these governors, who are putting in force mandates that they themselves don't even follow, that is strangling the businesses in their state, that people are losing their licenses, their alcohol license, their business license, that people are losing everything over, and then you ignore them yourself, you are a human piece of debris. You do not deserve to hold office. You do not deserve to be trusted or respected. You do not deserve a single thing from society. The minute you start making rules for others that you yourself cannot follow, get out. Get out. This is ridiculous. People are suffering. Just don't care. Just do not care at all. And of course, we saw this all across the country. I mean, even in my state, Kentucky here. There's a wonderful case that happened mid-last summer. And it was a case about protests. See, what happened is Governor Beshear here in Kentucky had closed the Capitol down to protesting because of COVID. And he created a free speech zone where people had to stay in their cars. And so some people took him to court. And they won an injunction saying that the governor of Kentucky could no longer restrict protests. And one of the arguments about those protests was during the same time that he had barriers up restricting others from protesting out at the Capitol. He himself hosted, invited, and pursued a protest following along Black Lives Matter. So it was something that he supported. So therefore, he allowed an exemption. And that was used as one of the crux of the arguments to say that he is treating speech differently and it was a violation of the Constitution, and the federal courts agreed. But yet there's still people out there who support Beshear and think everything he did was about safety when he ignored his own orders to host a protest that he agreed with. A single one of these people, single one of these hypocrites should not get to hold office again. Because they truly believe, I mean, look at it. You got the king of them all right now, Joe Biden, in office, the biggest hypocrite of all. Passes the 1994 crime bill that raises charges on drug addicts, while his own son is a drug addict. His own son, who he's helped stay out of jail. His own son, who he helped not be victim to the own laws he passed. What do we expect? We've set a precedent that says we will accept this. And this is okay, and we're just going to get over it. We'll keep voting you in. Not only will we keep voting you in, but on top of that, we're going to go ahead and, well, elect you to the highest office in the land. And people still want to support that. It's ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous. Moving on from all the hypocrites in this country. And trust me, there's a lot too. I mean, we talked a lot about Democrats. There's ones on the right too. And trust me, plenty of hypocrites on the right. Plenty of them. And anybody who's got being a hypocrite to the point that they will pass a law, such as the crime bill, such as COVID restrictions, which aren't laws but mandates, no matter their party, that then ignores it and breaks it, shouldn't hold office. But moving on to a interesting part here, we're gonna move on to talking about the Facebook user agreement. As many of you know, we've been throttled on Facebook right now. Of course, they won't tell us the amount of time they're willing to do it. And they cited us. One of our big strikes was for a court case we were broadcasting the other day. And so we wanted to look into it and say, what is it that's going on? So we start diving deep and we find their new user agreement. And we're going to roll through that here. Okay, we're going to roll through that here real quick. And we're going to go ahead. We're going to start off here and just kind of break down some of these things they say. Okay? One of the first things that's real troubling in here is that the first line, if we go to the top there, is about encouraging people to gather. Okay, so let's read exactly what it says there as far as encouraging people to gather. So what it wants to say is that under our coordinating harm policy, okay, coordinating harm, when we have additional information and context to identify it, we will also limit or delete content coordinating in-person events or gatherings when participation involves or encourages people who have COVID-19 to join. Now, that is left purposefully, open-ended. It is left that way because, well, quite frankly, they want to be able to enforce that how they want to. For an example, what could be an event? So if you're coordinating an event to say we're anti-mandate, well, are we encouraging participation for people with COVID-19 to join? You can make that claim because they'd say, well, people who are anti-mandate are anti-testing because we know that we got past that all along. And of course, people have always been saying we're anti-testing. And while we're not anti-testing, sorry, hold on. I'm going to take a sip out of my Andy's Tears tumbler. Oh, that's a good mocha. You should definitely buy that coffee. Brewedco.com. BREWEDCO.com. Remember to share too as well. Support us. Hit the share button. Tell people about us. Getting back into it though. In-person events. So what they're saying is if they have an event that they think that your event is somehow going to encourage COVID-19 people who have COVID-19 to join, then it's not allowed. So apparently if your event doesn't say, if you have COVID-19, don't come. But even then, will they be like, well, you're kind of encouraging it? I mean, we all saw how they did to Donald Trump, who said, go protest peacefully, but because he didn't specifically tell people to, I don't know, not be upset, he got banned off Facebook. They'll also prohibit coordinating events that call to action, advocating, promoting that others not have the vaccine. So if you have a rally and it's about anti-COVID vaccine passport rally, under these new rules Facebook could remove them. They could say, nope, that is not allowed. They can just up and decide that. They say, no, never mind, can't allow that. Now, if you go on down to their hate speech policy, this is what they have to say there. States that people who share a protected characteristic such as race or religion have the virus, created the virus, or are spreading the virus. This does not apply to claims about people based on national origin because we want to allow discussion focused on national level responses such as X number of Italians have COVID-19. Or you mock people who share protected characteristics such as race or religion for having COVID-19. I have a question there about hate speech policy there. Why does it matter what their race is? If this is what you're worried about, why not just make it anybody who mocks anybody for having COVID-19 and mark it there? Why is it? I don't understand why we bring race into it and why that's especially important. If you're so worried about it, just take it out across the board. Now, this is where it gets real interesting. If we go to the existence or severity of COVID-19 in their user agreement, claims that downplay the severity of COVID-19, such as that COVID-19 is no more dangerous to people than the common flu or cold. That's interesting because you wonder how that plays out. For an example, statistically speaking, looking at the data, if you take a place like Kentucky, where we have had, according to the CDC, which only counts confirmed deaths 0, according to the state numbers, which counts probables 2, deaths under 20 in the entire state from COVID. Every year, we have far more deaths than that from the flu. So saying that it's no more dangerous to people than the common flu or cold, I would agree with that statement. Obviously, we can look at the data that they put out there, and saying that data, we're not going to go into arguing about whether the data is correct or not. I don't even want to do that because I don't have to. Because looking at the data they provided, I understand how you could definitely say, hey, overall, the death rate for COVID is higher than the flu. You could even say that over a certain age, it is higher than the flu. But at a certain point, it becomes less than the flu. So am I now not allowed to say that? Am I not allowed to say the factual statement that in Kentucky, less people under the age of 20 have died from COVID by a magnitude of a great amount than have died from COVID-19? Because factually, that is true. But they're saying, well, now you're downplaying the severity of COVID-19. Am I downplaying it? Or am I stating what the facts are? Because when you look farther down, claims that mortality of COVID-19 is the same or lower than seasonal influenza. It is lower for people under 20 than the seasonal influenza. We just went over that. The data is very clear about that. Now, of course, if you want to argue about the data, they've got you covered too. Claims that the number of deaths caused by COVID-19 are much lower than the official figure. That will also get you banned. Of course, they have some claims about 5G not being allowed, which, I personally just haven't subscribed to that idea, but I'm okay hearing it because I'm not an idiot. When I hear something I don't agree with. For an example, you know what Facebook is based on our research doesn't ban? They don't ban, I'm sorry to anybody who believes this, I'm not trying to make fun of you. They don't ban the flat earth theory, conspiracy. They don't ban it. It's not banned anywhere. You can go on and you will not be throttled if you post a bunch of things about the flat earth. So in that same way, saying, 5G is causing COVID. I know people who believe it, just like I know people who believe the flat earth is there. I'm not saying those two are equal or anything else, but what I'm saying is I, as an intelligent human being, am able to work my way through the information, but apparently Facebook thinks you're too stupid to think for yourselves. Now, here's another part that gets kind of interesting. is about claims about transmission and immunity. So this is funny. So it says claims that any group is immune or cannot die from COVID-19 or that a specific activity or treatment results in immunity. Are you saying now, Facebook, that if you say the vaccine gives you immunity, it's not allowed? Because that's a treatment, a specific activity or treatment that you want us to say results in immunity. That is the line you want us to say. But according to your own policies, for me to say that would be improper, would not be allowed. And then you follow that up to guaranteed cures or prevention methods for COVID-19. Basically, you can't make any claims such as taking vitamin C helps prevent, severe reaction from COVID. They say consuming or inhaling specific items, medical or herbal remedies, external remedies for the outer body or skin. Once again, I ask you, so are you saying it's now not allowed on Facebook to post anything about the vaccine? You can't even now, if we're following this to the T. And this is the thing too. This is Facebook's own platform, right? So we're going to talk about here in a second what I would do to fix this problem. But Facebook owns this company. But there is even something, so when you agree to use Facebook, you're agreeing to a contract between you and Facebook about what you're going to say or do. And so Facebook has this contract, and here it is, and we're reading through it. But there is a legal process saying equal treatment. So for an example, if you have a contract that says if you're late to work, you lose a vacation day, or if you're late to work can result in negative occurrences such as you losing a vacation day, and you show up late to work one time and you lose a vacation day, and then you go and sue, and it finds out that over 20 occurrences of people being late to work over the prior year has occurred, and the remedy for none of those people has been losing a vacation day, then you have a case that they're treating you differently because of either your viewpoint, your person, some other issue, and you can make claims, you can make racial claims there, you can make a lot of claims. But if it looks like they're treating you different than they've treated other people that have done the same thing, there is a legal claim there for mistreatment. But of course, Facebook, because they're shielded by Section 230, evades a lot of lawsuits we'll get into, but claims that the average person something can guarantee or prevent from getting COVID-19. Well, that would include the vaccine. So if you're saying that, then if you say you should take the vaccine, it prevents COVID, you now are breaking Facebook's own guidelines. But of course, let's see there. Now, scrolling forward, this is what we got hit for. I think we got hit for twice on this, which is really interesting. Discouraging good health practices. Okay, claims about wearing a face mask, including claims that wearing a face mask does not help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Also claims that wearing a face mask can make the wearer ill. So this is really interesting, and this is why. So what we got hit for the other day was we were live streaming a court case here in Kentucky. The court case was over COVID. And there was a industrial hygienist, an IH expert, that had taken the stand. Now, for those who don't know, an industrial hygienist is an expert in the prevention and spread of dangerous chemicals, diseases, or infectious materials, especially in the workplace. And so if there would be somebody around the world that's a mask expert, it would be an industrial hygienist. Now, this individual was put on the stand as an expert on masks. He was legally considered an expert, despite the fact the governor's legal team, which includes the highest ranking lawyer other than the AG in the state, the governor's personal attorney, not personal attorney, but the governor's lead counsel, trying to make a legal case. He is not an expert. failed, and in the court of law, he was accepted as an expert on face masks. He is an expert. He is considered more of an expert on face masks than Dr. Fauci would be. He's a well-renowned industrial hygienist who's wrote many books. He's taken the stand hundreds of times as an expert. He's very high-ranking in the industrial hygiene field. And he stood up there and he said, first off, masks aren't PPE. Respirators are PPE. And these paper masks, the lowest respirator available is an N95. So anything below an N95 isn't even legally considered PPE. And he stood up there saying that not only does COVID-19, because it spreads through aerosols now, not droplets, and we figured that out recently, apparently, though all of us have been saying that for a while now, but because it spreads through aerosols and not droplets, because of the percentage of release and because of the size of the microns, and he went into this, he had a whole scientific thing he did. He was on the stand for like 2 hours about this. He said, according to the science on this, and me as an expert on masks, I'm telling you, and contaminants, wearing a face mask does not prevent the spread of COVID-19. He then goes on to say the reason why we don't often, we do not look at wearing respirators or any kind of facial covering as a long-term solution to contaminants is because people touch it and will spread contaminants around their body, or AKA make them ill. So we have a legally qualified expert on Facebook in a court ruling live saying that face masks don't help prevent the spread of COVID and that wearing a face mask can make you ill, and they hit us with it. What does Facebook know? What does Chad, the moderator in California, know about face masks that an industrial hygienist, expert in the field, legally qualified as an expert on face masks, doesn't know that they do? What do they know? Nothing. But Chad has decided that that's the information he's willing to share. Additionally, under that same tab, claims that social or physical distancing does not help prevent the spread of COVID-19. There is literally a study just done, I believe, by, it was published, peer-reviewed study done, I believe, out of Stanford. Somebody can correct me on it. And I know this was a published peer-reviewed study because it was used as evidence in a court case, accepted evidence by the judge and the other side's counsel, who had, Dr. Stack on their side, saying that because of how long the molecules hang in the air, because it's an aerosol, and aerosols take much longer to sink down, and that being 6 feet away or 60 feet away or 2 feet away does nothing to help spread the COVID-19 because it's aerosols and not droplets. He said that. Ding for that. But of course, too, I mean, that's just talking about COVID. That's talking about face masks. That's talking about a lot of these things. But then we come across claims about COVID-19 vaccines that contribute to vaccine rejection. Specifically, claims that COVID-19 vaccines do not exist or have not been approved, which leads haven't been approved. Well, if they've been approved, are there anything other than emergency use authorization, then why did Pfizer need to file for full approval? You can say they've been approved on an emergency use authorization, but they also haven't reached full approval. Like, that is just factual. So I guess you can say they're approved on an emergency use authorization, but they haven't been fully approved. Is that wrong to say? This next one down, especially egregious. Claims about the safety or serious side effects of COVID-19 vaccines, including claims that COVID-19 vaccines kill or seriously harm people, such as causing blood clots. They literally pulled Johnson & Johnson off the shelves for several weeks to investigate it causing blood clots that killed people, and they found that it did kill people with blood clots. That literally happened. That literally happened. And you're going to sit there saying, listen, you cannot post. Okay, so I want to see CNBC, CNN, MSN, Fox. I don't know. Every single mainstream media outlet, I want to see them banned today. Because they all ran a story about Johnson & Johnson being pulled down because it's causing blood clots. I want to see it. Come on. Let's remain consistent here. Claims about COVID-19 vaccine was developed or its ingredients. Under this one's particularly interesting because we have Facebook deciding their own facts again, such as claims that COVID-19 vaccines contain, were developed, produced, or designed with human tissue from aborted fetuses or aborted fetal tissue. Guys, why this is so interesting. In 2016, a case was started, litigated out here in our state of Kentucky about the chickenpox vaccine. And a large percentage of a population in a certain area didn't have the chickenpox vaccine. Why? Because the chickenpox vaccine, they had a religious exemption to because of the use of aborted fetal cells in the development of the vaccine. I don't believe the vaccine itself necessarily has them in them, but it was used in the development. This was taken to court and granted that you get a religious exemption from taking a vaccine because of aborted fetal cells. So Facebook is deciding on its own that that's not true because they don't want to tell you that. Because one of the major, once it gets full approval, legal arguments to not being forced to get vaccinated by your workplace or others would be that the religious exemption because of aborted fetal cells. And they can't allow that to exist. Now, I'm not going to sit here. I personally haven't looked hugely into COVID-19 vaccines to know whether or not they specifically have aborted fetal cells in it. I am told by individuals who understand the process that these vaccines come from, some of them came from the same line, at least Johnson & Johnson, of vaccines that were developed using aborted fetal cells. We know that other vaccines had the same thing, or else, well, the religious exemption argument wouldn't have worked in court here in the state of Kentucky. Now, would it have? Which is interesting. That Facebook is just deciding their own facts. Just deciding their own facts. Here's another interesting one. COVID-19 is man-made, including claims that it's manufactured, bioengineered, claims that it's a bioweapon, claims that it's created by an individual, government, or entity, excluding claims that it's studied in, came from, or was leaked from a lab without specifically calling it man-made. The coronavirus is actually a bioweapon, is their example. Or do you know COVID-19 was patented long ago? Let me read you a CNBC article from, today. From today. There's growing circumstantial evidence that COVID may have originated in a lab. Evidence that COVID-19 originally leaked from Wuhan virology lab is growing, Dr. Scott Gottlieb said today on CNBC. With other coronaviruses, SARS and MERS, researchers were able to identify the animal those diseases emerged from at this point in those outbreaks. Global health officials will meet soon to further investigate the origin of the virus. This is CNBC. This isn't like some crazy right-wing individual like Breitbart. Not saying Breitbart's crazy, but you know how people up there, you know how Chad, the old Facebook checker, you know how he looks at those sources. You have an ad blocker. Yep. We all know how Chad feels about those sources, but this is CNBC stating something that Facebook is saying breaks their policy. Is CNBC going to get banned? Or is it only me for reposting it? Is it only you for posting it out? I don't know. But it seems like not a very evenly levied rule, doesn't it? Another one that's interesting claims that COVID-19 was predicted. Now, of course, the reason why this is a little bit interesting to me is because if you guys remember, Fauci back in, I don't know, I believe it was 2016, 2017, said that no doubt, this was January 11, 2017, Fauci, no doubt Trump will face a surprise infectious disease outbreak. He said that in 2017. So was it predicted? Well, Fauci predicted it would happen. You can make your own conclusions as to how he knew it would happen or what have you. You know, maybe it's just a ticking time bomb. It was bound to happen. We hadn't had a major outbreak. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But more importantly, is Dr. Fauci going to get removed off Facebook for claiming and predicting the pandemic would happen? I have a feeling his page will be left alone. Have been left alone. Another interesting thing, criticizing people who take the vaccine. So if you say something like, I don't know, a person who would give a vaccine to their 10-year-old for testing when COVID has only killed 100 people or 150 people, or I believe it's 100-ish, 177 maybe, and the entire country under 10, allowing your kid to be tested for the vaccine, that seems like child abuse. Or that is clinically insane for you to allow that to happen. Facebook says, no. No more Facebook for you. Chad in California doesn't like you criticizing people because, you know, free speech or whatever. Hold on, I'm going to grab another sip of wonderful coffee here. Promoting vaccine refusals and alternatives, such as saying something we got dinged for was reposting a screenshot of a story linked to on the House floor. Dr. Fauci and our gentleman were sitting there, the head of the FDA, and were asked what percentage of their staff had gotten vaccinated. They said, around 60%, 50 to 60%. So Breaking 911 on Twitter ran a story that said 40 to 50% of FDA and CDC and staff have refused getting vaccinated. And Facebook dinged you right away for it. They testified on the floor that they hadn't taken it. They testified to that on the floor, that they hadn't taken it. Now, they're saying, well, they didn't say refuse now, so, you know, different story. Which I guess that's true on a technicality. But to ding people for saying something that is mostly true, at least, I mean, the fact checkers, if it was a Democrat saying it, would say that's mostly true. Though they didn't outright refuse it, they haven't been vaccinated, and they're the first ones to offer it. And, well, I'd have a hazard, I guess, to say at the front door is probably a vaccine station for you to get vaccinated at the CDC and FDA. I'd imagine they probably put on vaccine clinics. But hey. And finally, one of the more egregious violations is their shocking stories rule. Content that otherwise does not violate our COVID-19 or vaccine policies above, but that shares potentially or actually true events or facts that raise safety concerns, indicated by sharing personal anecdotes or news events of severe adverse events, either in hyperbolic terms or without context. Example, my friend had the vaccine, now has Bell's palsy, be warned. So now on your personal Facebook page, you're not even allowed to post anything about a personal story about rashes appearing on a friend of yours or yourself. Facebook will ban you for that. Now you say, Andrew, how do we fix this? Because even if you're on the far left, you've got to read through that and see those are some pretty crazy rules. I have to imagine if you're saying, you at least look at it and say those are some crazy rules. I mean, literally pointing to banning us or throttling us because we had the audacity to show a live video from a courtroom where a legally accepted expert was testifying en masse, and to hit us for that seems crazy. That absolutely is an abridgment of quote-unquote free speech. So you say, Andrew, how do we fix it? It's real simple. Facebook is absolutely a private company. Facebook can do whatever they want to as a private company. However, Facebook also is being protected by the federal government under Section 230. Section 230 shields them from lawsuits that normally would be levied against publishers. For an example, if a newspaper publishes a story saying that Andrew Cooperrider kills dogs as a fact, which I would never do that. I love puppers. I have one myself. But if they go out there and they say Andrew Cooperrider kills dogs, I can sue them for libel. The newspaper. Not the writer, the newspaper. Remember, Nick Salmon did this with CNN over the entire DC incident, came away supposedly a very rich man. It's not the writer who gets sued, but the publisher. Because as the publisher, as the moderator of the content that they're publishing, they are ultimately liable for what goes on there. So Section 230 treats them as a platform, not a publisher, which says that if you're a platform, not a publisher, you therefore cannot be held liable for somebody posts libel. For an example, if my neighbor down the street posts something that says Andrew Cooperrider kills dogs, I could now sue if Facebook was not being protected by 230. I could sue Facebook for libel for publishing a post or an article that is libelous and untrue. Facebook couldn't survive. So you can't be protected by the federal government while you're abridging free speech. And you say, well, how do we know what's abridging free speech? Guys, there is hundreds of years, like 300, since 1776. There has been court cases regarding, not 1776, but, you know, there's for over 100 years, there's been court cases regarding free speech. There is a legal precedent of what is free speech and what isn't. For an example, there's a legal precedent that says deleting profane language and not allowing that to be said. So for an example, there's a precedent that says if you stand on a street corner just with terrible signs with profane language right in front of somebody's house, you're not protected by free speech necessarily to do that. So therefore, there's already a legally established claim of what is free speech and not. Simply put, if a platform abridges that legally established situation over what is free speech and what isn't, they then lose their Section 230 protections. Because at that point, they're acting as a publisher. The minute Facebook, in their user agreement that I just went through, is deciding to ding people for streaming court cases, is deciding to chill free speech in that way, or is deciding to delete things because they don't agree with the viewpoint. And that's it. They don't agree with the viewpoint. Facebook has decided they don't agree with the viewpoint. Facebook doesn't have an expert checking every single post. They're just saying, I don't agree with this viewpoint. I'm deleting it. They're acting as a publisher. They should be treated as a publisher. Therefore, they should lose their Section 230 protections. This is a liberty solution. We don't need to regulate Facebook. We need to take away regulations that is protecting Facebook. That's the liberty solution. I thank you guys for joining me today. Once again, please follow our Telegram channel. That is Brewed Liberty on the Telegrams. Me, if you're typing it in, it's t.me/Brewed Liberty. Follow us there in case we get removed. Who knows? Maybe this video alone they remove us for because, well, we literally went through their user agreement and talked about what was wrong with it. So who knows? They hit us there. You can follow us on YouTube. Andrew Cooperrider /Brewed. Also our podcasts, as always, Fresh Brewed Politics on Spotify, Apple, all the places you can find politics. We will be rolling out a new website program with feeds and everything else. So that way, if we are removed off everything, you can always still come to our website and be able to follow us there as well. But please share us out there. They're throttling. They're holding us back. The best thing you can do for us, guys, the best thing you can do to help us out is to share us and buy our coffee as we get together and we fight just to be able to get our message out there of liberty and keep this movement going to lower the size of government, stop using government policies that protect and help large corporations like Facebook. And I thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I can't wait to join some of you here on Telegram.